Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and all week long we have had the opportunity to talk about our champions and industry nominees. And today I have in studio with me Dennis Kyle. He's with Zayo, which is nominated in the technology category. You guys got some stiff competition. You're up against AT&T and Crown Castle. But Zayo has a lot to say for themselves, and I'm very excited to get into this conversation with you. Dennis, let's talk a little bit about you. So you've had 20 years of leadership in technology and communications related industries, and you are currently the Senior Vice President of Fiber Solutions Rocky Mountain region. But I heard that you just got extended to the Plains
We
as
now
well.
call it Mountain Plains region because we included Texas and Oklahoma.
Wow.
And their nomination actually was to call it the Texas and a bunch of other states region. But we elected to keep it Mountain Plains.
Yes. Well, weird that Texas would want that, but.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's talk about that. So how many states, obviously Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado.
Sure.
How many states are under your belt?
It's actually 4 Western Canadian provinces and then 11 states. So basically Vancouver, BC, over through Alberta to Saskatchewan, and then through to Edmonton and Calgary, and then on down from Winnipeg to include Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, on through Colorado, Wyoming, Texas, straight on down.
Wonderful. Well, and that's awesome. I forgot that you extended up into Canada, so that's cool. So you're an international guy then.
I am international, and the company's international.
Yes.
We've got fiber footprint here in North America, but then also in Europe.
Oh, wonderful. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into Zayo Group. Let's talk about what they are, when they got founded, and exactly who they reach.
Okay, great. Well, we got founded in about 2007. We title ourselves as a communications infrastructure company. The core of the company is what we call fiber solutions. It forms the backbone of everything we do. We do have different product groups, fiber solutions being one of them, and I run one of 5 fiber solutions regions globally. 4 here in North America. We have other product groups, waves groups, transport, Ethernet. Those are different categories of communication services. And then we have, like I mentioned earlier, global presence with points of presence also in Asia, South America. So very, very heavy in North America and Europe, but also global in nature.
Wonderful. Any plans to expand globally?
We continue. Well, one little secret is that we've acquired 45 companies so far to date, and we remain acquisitive, so we're always looking and trying to find those right opportunities. Today, we're primarily, again, focused in North America and Europe, but we continue to look for opportunities to expand and grow as appropriate.
Wonderful. That's awesome. So talk to me. I think a lot of people have an issue with understanding fiber and 5G and what that means, right?
Sure.
I get that 5G is going to be a faster connection on my phone and I can like things faster on Facebook, but besides that,
perfect.
What do I need to know?
Well, I think the story behind Zayo is we are, as a fiber solutions company, we are the underpinnings for a lot of services you receive from the wireless carriers or from the cable providers. Our brand isn't something that usually faces the customer, but it underpins all the brands that the customer is well aware of. And so today's communication services, the internet, wireless, behind the wireless is a lot of wires, a lot of fiber to make it all work. Zayo is one of the predominant providers of that type of service to those providers. 5G just happens to apply in the wireless arena, so it is the purview of all the wireless carriers that you can think of. And it is a new technology that will be using a different set of spectrum to provide added value to the consumer. Consumer will see that and certainly faster likes on Facebook, but also more persistent connections, lower latency, and it will drive fundamental changes in the world as we know it, up to and including things like autonomous cars can only be made possible by something like 5G.
Wonderful. So you guys are on that forefront, which is really exciting.
We are.
That's awesome.
As the foundation to all of it. And that's why we continue to grow. That's why we continue to expand at the rate in which we are.
Awesome. So you guys don't service a direct consumer.
We do not.
Right. So my wireless carrier probably works with you guys.
Probably.
Yes. I'm not, no names,
almost
but
100%.
yes, exactly. So that's wonderful. So when I get mad at my wireless company for not being quick enough, is it you that I'm actually mad at?
No. Of course not. No, I mean, the reality is we do underpin and offer that service. So we are foundational to what you see as a consumer, and it's that type of demand that is driving the need for things like 5G. As there get to be more and more wireless users with a higher and higher need for more and more capacity and bandwidth. Video, as an example, is just consuming gobs and gobs of bandwidth, and it's part of our day-to-day activities, whereas 5-10 years ago it didn't used to be. And so, yeah, that's putting wireless demand into the marketplace, again, with fiber and a lot of wires underpinning it to make that happen. So our business continues to grow as the consumer demand continues to grow and as the wireless carriers themselves continue to grow. Right. So it's all one, hopefully, virtuous cycle, and hopefully, as a consumer, there isn't situations where you're running out of capacity.
Right. And I have no complaints so far. I will tell
Perfect.
you that. Zero complaints. But let's. Do you mind talking a little bit about the rural situation? Right. Particularly in Colorado, we have a lot of areas that aren't the Denver metro area and seem to have less fiber options, right?
Sure.
Less 5G access. How is Zayo working in the face of that?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that we do, there's a federal program called E-Rate, which is targeted at rural communities and primarily focused on education. And so it's targeted at K through 12 specifically. And what it does is it provides federal funds to help support the build out of fiber networks into those more rural and frankly suburban types of geographies. Even in that situation, sometimes it's still urban. Denver Public Schools, one of our biggest customers here locally, actually availed itself of E-Rate funds in order for to purchase the necessary fiber solutions network that we put in place with them to about 150 schools.
Wow.
Here. And so we work with those types of programs both. I think the emphasis, to your point, is rural, but sometimes it does also show up here in urban areas as well to help fund the expansion of that network.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about let's talk about employees.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. So you just exceeded the 1,000 mark, right? So
here in the Colorado area.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I
worldwide we're closer to 4,000.
I would imagine. Sorry, right. I should. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I appreciate that. So current projects. Let's talk about UC Health, and you just mentioned Denver Public Schools, which is amazing. But UC Health, tell me all about it.
So UC Health is obviously a local establishment here, and it's got operations all up and down Colorado, from Fort Collins down to Colorado Springs, up and down the Front Range, I should say. And as a healthcare provider, they're another industry that's going through revolution and change, and things like telehealth, which we used to just imagine some time ago, are now the norm, or remote surgeries. And so the amount of communications that's required to make something like that happen is order of magnitude more than what was necessary just a few years ago. So we worked with UC Health to deploy a fiber ring that basically connected their locations between Fort Collins and Colorado Springs, providing them with about 40 times the bandwidth that they had previously. And now they're also taking that and expanding that network to connect into other locations that perhaps are smaller in nature, remote offices, medical offices, those types of things. So it's not just the hospitals.
Wonderful. And that's so cool. And you mentioned the teledoc stuff, but I would imagine that a lot of health related technology that's needed are the EMS teams, right? They need to make sure that they can quickly get a hold of people.
Absolutely. And that now puts you back into the wireless space. So this is where everything kind of connects, right?
Okay.
So there are situations where the EMS providers need to have priority, right? and also need to have sufficient capacity, especially in the case of medical situations or emergency evacuations and the like. And again, as Zayo is, again, not the brand that necessarily the consumer sees, but we are underneath it all making that happen in terms of providing fiber to the towers, which are required to make the communications work, or in the case of 5G, providing fiber to the small cells to make those work, right? So there's a kind of an evolution of the density, the wireless density required to support both EMS and the average consumer.
Cool. So you're saving lives, is what you're saying?
Not me personally.
I put those words
but
in
we're
your
involved.
mouth.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some future projects, right? So you mentioned autonomous vehicles. Can
Sure.
you dive in a little bit more on that? Yeah.
Sure.
Tell me a little about that.
Well, so it's an area that's going to be primarily impacted from our perspective from 5G. That's the role we play. Nothing in the vehicles themselves.
Right.
But when you start to talk about autonomous vehicles, you're talking about the need for instant connections, right? Zero latency.
Yeah.
That's something that can only be deployed on a technology such as 5G. And you can see it in real-world situations of your cars now communicating with traffic lights or with the cars around it. That needs to be done on a real-time basis. And what's driving that is the need for that instant connectivity, pervasive connectivity, and therefore it's leading for the need to allow for something we call densification, which is taking the current wireless infrastructure that we've been building with the wireless carriers for a period of years, and literally multiplying the amount of cell sites by 100 or 1,000 in some cases.
Wow.
Right. So huge build out, huge effort, huge initiative. The result of which will yield 100 times the capacity, 100 times the speed, all the things that you need in order to drive an autonomous vehicle. I guess one more fact on that, an autonomous vehicle kicks out about 500 times the data usage of an iPhone. So you start to get a feel for what that's like. Every time you see one iPhone, you need to think about 500 worth of data coming out of an autonomous vehicle.
Whew. That's really hard to imagine, actually. But I love that you guys are on the forefront of being able to get that on the ground and running. I know lots of places are testing autonomous vehicles right now, but to make sure that that runs smoothly is a huge job. And so congratulations on being the forefront of that. That's
thank you.
Exciting, yes. So most people know that wireless technology requires spectrum, but they may not realize that wireless 3G, 4G, 5G requires fiber to backhaul data and traffic. So I know we've talked a little bit about the fiber, but go into detail. What is what is fiber? Is it actual, can I touch it? Can I feel it? Is that what goes in the ground?
Yeah.
Lead me down this path.
Well, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. We are a communications infrastructure company. That's how we brand ourselves. So as you think about it, it's much like the highways that we have today, whether it's I-70 or I-25. There's a lot of physical work that goes into making this happen. So fiber is essentially glass that goes into the ground that transmits the electric light waves, or the light waves themselves, lambdas is the technical term, from point A to point B.
Okay.
And it is a very physical type of implementation, so it does involve boring underneath streets, going over highways, going across the country. Here in Colorado or in the Denver area, for example, we've got 4,000 plus route miles of fiber that are deployed across the Front Range area. On a global basis, we've got 12 million fiber miles, right? So these are all basically physical manifestations of work that needs to be done to put fiber that carries wavelengths, a form of light, in the ground to enable communications from point A to point B. And then the 5G, where this started from, is basically the latest manifestation of the wireless technology. But to your point, it's also going to continue to be supported by 4G, as an example, right?
Okay.
And those two technologies will actually blend in the marketplace. Most of the press today is going to continue to be on 5G because that's the newest, latest, and greatest things. But it all works together to provide you, as a consumer, with the best possible wireless experience.
Wonderful. So we know that 5G is the next up and coming, or some places already have it.
Sure.
Is there a 6G on the horizon? Are we just
I am sure there is, but right now we have our hands full with 5G.
Okay,
we'll
wonderful.
keep ourselves focused there. No doubt about it.
Well, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit here,
okay.
And talk about one of the main reasons that you guys were nominated as being a champion in the industry is because of your involvement in philanthropy and the
sure.
community. So let's talk about your entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Colorado Business Roundtable, we're big advocates for entrepreneurship and businesses getting started out there, and especially, young workforce development, right? And so young kids going into businesses and schools, but entrepreneurship is something that you guys are at the forefront of, if you don't mind going into that for me.
Yeah, so again, the company got founded in 2007, so not that long ago, went public in 2014, I think it was. And so if you look at the growth rate of the company, it is pretty doggone quick. We're now $2.7 billion company, starting almost from scratch. So rapid growth. We've also taken pains to invest heavily in the startup community. So we are part of Galvanize, as an example. They're a partner of ours. We spend time with Denver Startup Week, Longmont Startup Week, Tech Entrepreneurs, Techstars. Those are all organizations that, as a company, we feel that we want to be a part of, if you will, to keep our knife sharp in terms of what separates us from perhaps other telecommunications companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you stay on top of the Denver Startup, or well, not just Denver Startup Week.
Longmont, Boulder.
Yeah.
I think we involved in all of them.
Awesome. Well, and that's great because I think Colorado's really underrated when it comes to the technology market.
Sure.
Yeah. Everyone thinks of Silicon Valley, but I like to think we're close, right?
Well, one of the things that we've actually started to coin is Silicon Valley may be a great place for startups. Obviously, we would suggest that the Front Range is also a great place for startups, but it's also a great place for the next step for startups. So if you're now entering a growth phase, Colorado itself we find to be a great place to recruit people and grow companies. So that's also an area that we get involved in, if you will, that aspect of the startup community, which is the next step, the growth stage as well.
I have never heard that, so I really appreciate that. I'm going to plaster that everywhere.
Sure.
Yeah, we may be a great place to start up, but we're definitely a better place to grow.
That's
love that. Thank you. So let's talk about your, I want to talk about STEM.
Sure.
So for those listeners that are not familiar, science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. And I believe it may have been changed to STEAM a couple years ago with the arts added in there.
Okay.
As well. Yes.
I wasn't aware of that one, but all right, that works.
See, we're learning from each other. So STEM, one of the big things I think that we notice as a nation, but in Colorado too, there's a lack of women in the technology field, in the STEM fields in general. But in technology, you guys are doing amazing. You have some really, really good stats here, if you don't mind. 42% of your employees in Colorado are women.
That's correct.
52% in your Boulder market are women. So that's over 1,000 employees Colorado-wise and over 600 employees in the Boulder area.
That's right.
Those are phenomenal stats. So do you mind talking a little bit about women in tech and the STEM fields in general?
Well, yeah. So obviously we think it's a priority, and we spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurial groups as well as the colleges and universities. And then we also spend a lot of time recruiting for the right types of folks, women in this case, to augment our workforce. We feel that diversity has its own value add as far as making Zayo a cutting-edge company able to compete in the global marketplace. And it takes work, but it is something that we have dedicated the time to make happen.
So you have this Women in Technology Resource Group. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, that is I hate to overuse the term, but it's actually a grassroots group where a number of women at Zayo got involved, decided this is something that they wanted to focus on. It was supported by the leadership, and it has grown, I think, at a fairly rapid rate. It includes Boulder, it includes Denver, and most recently, it also includes our customers. And so these women are gathering together, spending time. And I should probably say it's not just women. Certainly that's the focus of the group, but it is at a grassroots level sponsored by Zayo executives, right, who are also supportive and helping to encourage this group that is mentorship, guidance, sharing of information, sharing of best practice, thoughts, those types of things. And it's not overly legislated. It's not something that's mandated.
Right.
It's something that grew in of itself and was supported by the leadership and then has managed to continue to pick up steam.
And I think the key thing that you're saying there is that it's not mandated. It's
Exactly.
Not, it's not the old, make sure we have diversity and inclusion included. It came organically from in the company, which
That's
is
right.
awesome.
That's right.
I love seeing
It's like
that.
a mentorship thing that it started, right?
Yeah.
From one to the other. Each women supporting women, and then it grew from there.
And I have to tell you, as a mentee myself, it's amazing to have that built into the company that you're working for. Rather than trying to find that on your own, it can be a little tougher. Yes, so that's amazing. I also want to talk about your Be Strong Ride program that you have, and that's every year in August. You guys do a ride across the plains. So tell me about that.
Well, I'll have to start off by saying I'm not a bike rider, and I haven't participated.
I'm not either, but that's okay.
But 130 people from Zayo have. Okay. It's a ride that starts in Boulder, and I believe ends up near Netherlands. So it's up in the mountains.
Yeah.
And it is to raise money for cancer. George Carl actually started the Be Strong Foundation. Of which Zayo has participated for the last several years as one of the largest contributors, has some of the most participants, those types of things. And it's designed to raise money to fight cancer, is what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's another community involvement that I think Zayo goes out of its way to make sure that it supports, drives, and encourages. So it is pervasively communicated and pervasively supported by the employees of Zayo in Boulder and Denver. And we actually have folks fly in from other parts of the country to actually participate in the ride. Again, not myself, but there are others who do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had no idea that you had participants fly in for that. And I would imagine that that's a great bonding experience for everyone in the company.
It is. And it's not just the ride itself. It's all the work that goes into it ahead of time and the support and the communication. It is well known to be kind of one of Zayo's things, if you will, in the area.
Well, and one of the interesting things that I read on your blog, which I have to give you props. Whomever is running the blog for Zayo is doing a fantastic job. So let them know that.
I can't take credit for that one, but thank you as well.
Yes, absolutely. But one of the things I noticed on your Be Strong ride page is that you rode for one of your own last year, Emily Daniels.
Yes, that's right.
For the Lung Cancer Foundation, and actually half of the proceeds that you had that year went to the Lung Cancer Foundation and for her treatment.
Correct. That's right. Yeah.
So you even gather around your own.
Absolutely. And she is the wife of, frankly, a direct peer of mine within the organization. Ended up with lung cancer at a very young age. There's a stereotype that lung cancer has to do with smoking. Nothing to do with her situation or her condition. And so I think that was a learning experience for folks. And it gave everyone in the company an opportunity to rally around, like you said, someone that's one of our own, someone that we knew. And it just helped to encourage, I think, part of the Zayo culture.
Wonderful. My gosh, Dennis, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Glad I could make the time.
Yes. So happy to have you in studio. And again, you are in our technology category for Champions in Industry up against two other pretty big competitors in the market. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you. And best of luck to you at the award ceremony on December 3rd. You can sign up for that award ceremony at cobrt.com/events. We will see Dennis there, as well as a few people from your team, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yes. We are looking forward to that. Again, that's at the Cable Center, but click on December 3rd on our events page. You'll be able to sign up for it there. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Check out zayo.com, see what they're all about, and read that blog. It's amazing. Have a great day.
Thanks, Alex.